Do you ever wonder what the heck money is? Well, I don't know about you, but I sure do.
Yeah, man, what the heck is money?
Tina, pipe down. I'll get to that.
Man, what the heck is money, man? Is that just something to buy a Coors Light with, man? Tell me.
Ron, settle down. Let me finish my video. Okay, back to the video. So at one point there was no money on the planet. Now there are trillions of dollars worth of fiat currency, trillions of dollars of debt, trillions of dollars worth of assets such as stocks and bonds. In the end, money has value because we all agree it does. Why does this $50 bill have value? It's the belief that the US government can be trusted enough to support it. So how did we go from bartering to now where there's cryptocurrency in a new digital age? We went from seashells, animal skins, salt, and weapons to coins, gold, to paper money, and now we're in the digital age. In the end, money is a medium of exchange that we all agree on. Over time, that's been many things. Well, let's start at the beginning. Bartering kicked things off, but that leads to the coincidence of wants. Basically, in bartering, you both need to want what the other person's willing to trade. If not, it doesn't work very well. The guy with a perishable vegetable, for instance, has a short time period to trade his items, and the other person might not want 100 pieces of corn. So a medium of exchange popped up. Cowrie shells, beads in Africa. The Yap Islands in Micronesia had big giant stones called ray. That held value. You need something that held value that didn't deteriorate quickly. The cowrie shells were small, durable, and almost impossible to counterfeit. The beads hard to make, and the ray stones were hard to source and bring back to the island. The ray rocks are interesting because they were so heavy. While the stones never moved, the ownerships would transfer and it would be made known verbally and everyone would know who owned the rock. The ray was a good medium of exchange, and an Irish-American, David O'Keefe, wanted to trade with the islanders and realized he could go back, get a ship, and mine more of the ray stones and have lots of money on the island. Interesting, one of those ray stones fell off a canoe and went to the bottom of the sea, but enough people witnessed it that it was seen to have the value and ownership. O'Keefe did bring inflation, and when he brought more and more ray stones, they seemed to lose their value. Eventually, the currency fell to the wayside. Inflation is a problem for many currencies. Around 2,700 years ago or so, the first coins, if not the first coins, popped up in Lydia. It took a while, but they eventually used in commerce and trade. Coins grew over the coming centuries, and you saw debasement of the currency in the Roman empires, too much for them to pass up. And by the 3rd century, there was almost no silver in the coins. Paper money has sprouted up a few times, but the official government paper money was around 1000 AD. Instead of carrying coins, people could carry paper note, which had no intrinsic value. This led to people to live a more prosperous life, but eventually a new ruler in China got rid of that money. In a sense, the Knights of Templar became a version of the first international bank. In the medieval times, monetary systems digressed, if anything, but eventually paper money made a comeback. And then versions of banking and debt. We moved into a more modern era with gold-backed dollars, but that went away in 1971 when U.S. President Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard. Since then, the U.S. dollar has been backed by the U.S. economy, government, and military. However, over time, you see that power to print money is too much to pass up. Romans debased their currency. We have seen massive inflation. Basically, every government and king has overprinted money. Over the last 100 years, the purchasing power of the dollar has steadily declined. It's went down and down. We all know that the U.S. has printed trillions of dollars in the last few years. And really, the last 10 or 20 years, they've printed a massive amount. With more dollars, people's savings accounts are less, and they can buy less. Gold has been the best store of value over time in history so far. The inflation is relatively low, and you can't counterfeit it. The digital age of money could have been seen being kicked off in the 1970s when some Federal Reserve banks started to commute electronically. Then we got plastic credit cards, and now today with Venmo, PayPal, and even our banks, the money we mostly spend is numbers in an account. We don't even see much of the physical money anymore. This inflation from governments, which tends to make the rich richer and the poor poorer, combined with the 2008 banking crisis, partially gave birth to Bitcoin. That's when the person or group of people known as Satoshi Nakamoto launched Bitcoin with the first Genesis block in January of 2009. Electronic cash wasn't a new idea, but it was the first peer-to-peer money that didn't need a third party, that also solved the problem of double spending. Bitcoin is actually two things. First off, it's the most powerful computer network, doing over 209 quintillion calculations per second. Thousands, if not millions, of computers around the world are running calculations 24/7, securing the Bitcoin network and trying to win the mint of the next Bitcoin block. Also, thousands of nodes worldwide are verifying those transactions. No one country or group of people control Bitcoin. Anyone can send anyone else on the earth that has a Bitcoin receive address money. It's an amazing advancement in the monetary system. There's a fixed supply of Bitcoin. There'll only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, and about 19.4 million are already in existence, which means around 1.5 million will be minted from now until the year 2140. No central entity can decide to print more Bitcoin. There's a fixed supply, and when you factor in the several million Bitcoin that are lost forever, it's the hardest, most decentralized form of money that has ever existed. Now, who knows the future, and the central authorities and countries and banks will fight to keep their share of the monetary system moving forward. But I think we need a decentralized money like Bitcoin that no one group controls and that doesn't get inflated into oblivion. So basically, we had no money on Earth, then we started bartering our goods, and then we came up with objects that we considered to have value that were kind of like money, like seashells, salt, and then we went to coins that had gold and silver in them, and then paper notes that were backed by gold coins or gold or silver, and then now we're in the digital age, and Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are offering a decentralized way that we can have a new monetary system that doesn't kill us with inflation. I'll finish the video here with this Peter Van Valkenburg clip of him talking about what Bitcoin is.
Chairman Crapo, Ranking Member Brown, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Peter Van Valkenburg, and I'm the Director of Research at Coin Center, an independent nonprofit focused on the public policy issues affecting cryptocurrency and public blockchain networks. What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the world's first cryptocurrency, and it works because of the world's first public blockchain network. What does Bitcoin do? It's simple. It lets you send and receive value to and from anyone in the world using nothing more than a computer and an internet connection. Now, why is it revolutionary? Because unlike every other tool for sending money over the internet, it works without the need to trust a middleman. The lack of any corporation in between means that Bitcoin is the world's first public digital payments infrastructure. And by public, I simply mean available to all and not owned by any single entity. Now, we have public infrastructure for information, for websites, for email. It's called the internet. But the only public payments infrastructure that we have is cash, as in paper money. And it only works in face-to-face transactions. Before Bitcoin, if you wanted to pay someone remotely over the phone or the internet, then you could not use public infrastructure. You would rely on a private bank to open their books and add a ledger entry that debits you and credits the person you're paying. And if you both don't use the same bank, well, then there'll be multiple banks and multiple ledger entries in between. With Bitcoin, the ledger is the public blockchain, and anyone can add an entry to that ledger, transferring their Bitcoins to someone else. And anyone, regardless of their nationality, race, religion, gender, sex, or creditworthiness, can for absolutely no cost create a Bitcoin address in order to receive payments digitally. Bitcoin is the world's first globally accessible public money. Is it perfect? No. Neither was email when it was invented in 1972. Bitcoin's not the best money on every margin. It's not yet accepted everywhere. It's not used often to quote prices, and it's not always a stable store of value. But it is working, and the mere fact that it works without trusted intermediaries is amazing. It's a computer science breakthrough, and it will be as significant for freedom, prosperity, and human flourishing as the birth of the internet. And Bitcoin is just the beginning. If we can replace private payments infrastructure, then we can replace other private choke points to human interaction as well. Now, why should we want to build more public infrastructure? Why should we embrace blockchains over corporate intermediaries? Why should we tolerate their inefficiencies and work to make them better? Why should we want the pioneers of this technology here in the United States and not fleeing overseas? A simple reason. Because the corporate intermediaries providing today's critical but privately owned infrastructure are becoming fewer, larger, and more powerful. and their failures are increasingly grave. So roughly half of all Americans, 143 million people, had their Social Security numbers exposed to hackers because of a breach at Equifax. The SWIFT network has relayed hundreds of millions of dollars in fraudulent transactions because of hacked member banks in Bangladesh, Vietnam, Ecuador, and Russia. The FBI suspects now that the largest of these hacks was perpetrated by North Korea. Corrupt, low-level employees at an Indian bank, Punjab National, were able to fraudulently certify SWIFT messages stealing $1.8 billion. It's the largest electronic bank robbery in history. In fact, it's the largest bank robbery in history. In October 2016, an estimated 1.2 million internet-connected devices were hacked and turned into a botnet that for several hours made prominent websites unavailable across Europe and North America, including CNN and Fox News, the New York Times, and the Wall Street Journal. Increasingly, physical machines are being connected to the internet to augment their capabilities. They're wired through servers that are owned and maintained by private and trusted intermediaries, the so-called Internet of Things. Pacemakers from St. Jude's Hospital have been hacked. Baby monitors from TrendNet have been hacked. And Jeeps from Jeep have been hacked to the point where they can be remotely commandeered and driven off the road. Now, those vulnerabilities are inescapable in systems that have single points of failure. It doesn't matter if the point of failure is a corporation or if it's a government. There shouldn't be a single point of failure. Similar choke points existed before the internet. If you wanted to deliver a message, you'd have to go through one of 3 television broadcasters or a handful of newspapers. Private corporations are essential, but no critical infrastructure should rely on 1 or 2. The internet removed single points of failure in communications infrastructure and ushered in a wave of competition among new media corporations building on top of its public rails. Blockchains can similarly disintermediate critical payments and IoT infrastructure. The technology is not yet ready to answer all of those questions today, but it is our best hope. And as with the internet in the 1990s, we need a light-touch, pro-innovation policy to ensure that these innovations flourish in America for the benefit and security of all Americans.